Hey, welcome to another video. I've missed you guys. So today we're going to be going into the powers and abilities of Count Dooku. But before we begin, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. So as a Jedi, Dooku was known for being highly talented in the ways of the Force, the most gifted student of his time, and mastered many of the Jedi arts. Dooku was recognized as being particularly skilled in telekinesis, and in addition to being able to easily move objects with the Force by the age of 7, he even won the 12 and under push feather tournament at only 9 years of age, as well as having lectured on the subject as a Jedi Master, by saying that he levitated a massively heavy pot when Yoda asked him to do so. He often used his mastery of telekinesis to augment his dueling prowess with great effectiveness, and was quite skilled at directly attacking other Force adepts with telekinetic strikes. He was also capable of a limited form of flight. As a Sith Lord, he sometimes combined telekinesis with the use of Force lightning or Force choke. Despite his mastery of telekinesis, he thought little of using the saber throw technique, believing that one's lightsaber should never have to leave one's hand. However, he did use a saber throw against Yoda on Geonosis when the Grand Master was out of reach. Dooku would have developed great skill in the telekinetic prowess derived from the dark side after his conversion, such as Force choke and Force grip, which he was able to kill off Komari Vosa, his former Padawan, swiftly as punishment for failing him, and later on he defeated Kenobi by gripping him with the Force tightly enough to knock him out before tossing him aside. Dooku also had great skill in using telekinesis for finer, more precise tasks, such as disarming Ventress, while also levitating her against a wall during her failed attempt to kill him with Savage Opress. Dooku was also an extremely skilled and vastly experienced lightsaber duelist. Before his resignation, Dooku was known as one of the most skilled duelists and lightsaber instructors in the entire Jedi Order. Next to Yoda, Dooku was the finest lightsaber instructor in Jedi history, and possibly the one that held true mastery with a blade without aid of the Force, competing in the title of best lightsaber duelist not only of his time, but of the greatest period. He was the Jedi Temple's most agile swords master and instructor, apart from Yoda himself. Dooku's skills were so great that he was even known for having once bested Mace Windu at sparring, a feat that only Yoda was able to achieve. And during the time of the Confederacy crisis, it is said that only Windu would have been able to be his equal, and only Yoda surpassed him on neutral ground. However, Dooku's skills might have surpassed Windu due to Dooku having held his own against both Windu and Kenobi for quite some time, and even defeated him once, although he used the Force and had help from Magna Guards. Dooku's dueling skills even proved enough to strike fear into both Sidious and his master Darth Plagueis, who regarded Dooku as a rival and possible threat, suggesting his skills even surpassed Sidious. Dooku only continued to further hone his lightsaber combat skills after becoming Darth Tyrannus at Sidious' encouragement, fighting the Grand Master of the Jedi Order to a standstill, even if he would have lost, instilled surprise and shock in Sidious, as Yoda posed the only Jedi he truly dreaded. This feat cemented Sidious' confidence that he had chosen a worthy successor to Maul, one with mastery in a rare lightsaber style that would provide an edge against all of the Jedi. Before the Clone Wars, Tyrannus made short work of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, and stood up against Yoda, who praised Tyrannus for fighting well. But he proved unable to effectively match his former master, and was forced to retreat. Tyrannus killed many Jedi during his reign, even highly skilled ones, even when outnumbered, and in almost all of his altercations with the likes of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Despite their own improvements, Dooku proved to be able to take both of them at once equally, and even at times gain the upper hand, although at times he did lose. He would often defeat them in single combat, and only at times when Anakin was angered was Dooku overwhelmed, although it was still not without considerable effort. However, this continued focus on honing solely on his Force abilities eventually caused his improved abilities to atrophy by 20 BBY, as perceived by Yoda, who deemed him to no longer be a formidable opponent as his skills with the lightsaber had gone backwards. Perhaps contradictory to Yoda's claim was the final engagement the Grand Master had against his fallen apprentice after their failed attempt to reconcile at Vijun, Feeling betrayed, Dooku not only dueled Yoda once again on equal footing, but also managed to slightly wound the small Jedi Master, a feat no other swordsman, Jedi, or Sith had accomplished. Though Tyrannus could still not defeat him, proving capable of still stalemating the best lightsaber duelist in the Jedi Order, even almost 3 years after Geonosis, argues his extraordinary skills that remained intact. At the Clone Wars' final days, Dooku prepared to still hold incredible dueling prowess, as seen in his final duel with both Anakin and Kenobi. He managed to fend both of them off at the same time, even though their prowess having greatly increased long enough to use his force powers to separate Kenobi from Anakin. Even at the age of 83, Dooku proved still capable of fending off Kenobi's exemplary defensive expertise of Form 3 and standing toe-to-toe against Anakin's domineering and fluent use of Form 5. Nevertheless, due to their significant improvement of each lightsaber style throughout the Clone Wars, plus being twice as old as Kenobi, and a steeper 60-year difference between Skywalker, the aged Sith Lord could only fight them to a standstill and stalemate, relying on his powerful connection with the Force to separate them. Tyrannus fought Anakin's greatly improved abilities on equal footing, and was only bested when Anakin tapped into his rage, at which he could put up a fight for a time. Through styles like Form 1 and Form 3 and Form 5 were more practical at the age of blasters, Dooku's competitive spirit drove him towards the second form of lightsaber combat, Makashi. He exclusively utilized Makashi in combat, believing that duelists who devoted themselves to the study of multiple combat forms would never attain the same level of mastery as ones who devoted themselves to a single style. In addition, he appreciated the lack of acrobatics that the style possessed, and was fairly disdainful of combat styles that utilized extensive acrobatics like Ataru. In addition, while he did train Grievous, whose style utilized up to 4 lightsabers, Dooku himself was a strong proponent of using a single blade in combat, and believed that multi-bladed styles were somewhat garish. Dooku's mastery of Makashi was exemplary, considered to be the greatest user of Makashi of his time, which was one of the reasons why Darth Sidious chose him, as Dooku's outstanding mastery of such a rare form provided him with an edge against most duelists, who simply were not prepared for Dooku's finesse and precise movements, coming from his mastery of a form bred for lightsaber dueling. Hence, Dooku would give the Sith an edge over the Jedi during the Clone Wars. His blade work was outstandingly elegant and precise, displaying a pinpoint accurate and unpredictable offense reinforced by almost effortless defense, that were so thoroughly practiced to the point that he could do it on instinct. Dooku's style was fluidly defensive, using his superior mobility and balance as well as feints to entrap his opponents, and footwork to outmaneuver, basing himself on balance, back and forth charges and sudden retreats, to work his way around opponents, aptly deflecting and evading their attacks rather than trying to meet them head-to-head first with ease, allowing him to effectively conserve his energy in order to later unleash rapid and devastating counters. The wait and bait style allowed Dooku to create a perfect replica of Sarisu's focus on letting the opponent use up their energy, and expose themselves and then entrap them. From a tight defense to rapid offense, Dooku showed great skill in both methods of attack, which allowed him to counter most lightsaber forms with ease. His knowledge of each lightsaber's weakness also gave him an advantage. Combined, Dooku knew how to exploit them. Obi-Wan Kenobi was forced to attack when fighting the Sith Lord, the opposite philosophy of Form 3. Anakin's devastating blows of Damn So would be negated when Dooku could outpace and deflect its power, and release his own parries, keeping the Chosen One on his toes, failing to defense instead of aggression. Qui-Gon's sparring sessions made Dooku familiar with Form 7, relying on winning a duel at the start and quick exhaustion due to wild acrobatics. He was unable to use this when fighting Yoda, however, as his former master was just too quick. He was also known to attack with a fencing-style thrust. The most prominent display of his superb application of Form 2's tenets were shown in his duel with Kenobi on Geonosis, in which he easily outmaneuvered him, with his efficient defensive maneuvers leaving the Jedi's swift slashes looking exaggerated and overdone, and the Count's precise and unpredictable feints, confusing and nearly entirely leaving the Jedi unable to keep up at all. Dooku was also able to completely dodge many of Kenobi's parries and blocks from interfering with his blade work, forcing him to retreat. Eventually, Dooku swiftly brought down by guiding the final blade lock into Kenobi's leg and then soundly inflicting another light, though damaging cut in his left arm. Dooku also matched Anakin's use of his force powers with his precision, and when Anakin, having quickly tired, left a slight opening, Dooku was able to slice his hand off and defeat him due to his far more energy-efficient Makashi proving to win over Anakin's use of the Force to augment himself. His skill in Form 2 was so great that he was capable of effectively overcoming the weakness of the form, as shown by how he could hold his own against 3 opponents with little difficulty, despite the fact that Makashi was not suited for combat against multiple opponents. He was also extremely competent at deflecting blaster bolts, despite Makashi's weakness against projectile weapons. And although Dooku had a great deal of difficulty producing any kinetic energy in his attacks, just like any other Makashi user, he showed the ability to compromise this flaw to a remarkable degree, by repeatedly deflecting power duelists at his constant ability to outfight Anakin Skywalker, a master of damn so. However, Dooku ultimately proved still susceptible to the aforementioned flaw, as shown by how Savage Opress, having acquired a considerable amount of skill with a lightsaber after only a few training sessions with Dooku, and possessed Juggernaut-like strength, managed to disarm him when fighting alongside Ventress. And most prominently was when Anakin Skywalker tapped upon his rage. As on all occasions, Dooku was overwhelmed, and eventually in their final duel, this culminated in Anakin striking him down without much effort. Although Dooku's primary specialization was Makashi, he was still highly knowledgeable in the other forms, being considered one of the Temple's best lightsaber instructors. He retained his competence with them after he became a Sith Lord, and proved to be good enough to instruct Grievous in their use, and at times he also gave him some corrections and advice when he passed on his training to the IG-100 Magna Guard bodyguards. It also seems that Dooku at times applied the forms to a degree and combined them with his usage of Makashi to overcome its weaknesses, implying he also had decent practical skills but simply chose not to use them. His ability to make short work of blaster-wielding foes can be attributed to his ability in either Cheyenne or Surisu, while his proficiency in combining force attacks clearly showed his competence in Nyman. He also used Form 5's opening stance in his final duel with Anakin, although he disliked using Ataru's acrobatics. He had showed the ability to perform them with outstanding skill on one occasion, when he dominated both Anakin and Obi-Wan. From his spars with Qui-Gon Jinn, Dooku managed to see through all of the weaknesses of Ataru, hence knowing how to counter its acrobatic attacks. He developed a strategy where he would launch a series of thrusts towards the enemy's legs to draw the opponent into a flipping overhead leap, so that Dooku could burn through the enemy's spine from kidneys to shoulder blades with his Makashi attack. Upon joining the Sith, having little left to learn about dueling, he instead learned the Sith art of Dunmok, a tactic that focused on disrupting an opponent's concentration by using psychological warfare. His most notable usages of the technique were against Anakin Skywalker. However, each time he applied it, it backfired, and he only encouraged Anakin to draw on his anger, which more often than not spurred him on to victory. The first instance of this on Tatooine resulted in Tyrannous' defeat, although he survived the incident. The second attempt during this final duel with Anakin aboard the Invisible Hand was nearly successful. Unfortunately for the Sith Lord, it too backfired, as his taunts only encouraged Anakin to fall into his rage and break through Tyrannus' defense. This time, Tyrannus did not survive. So what do you guys think of the powers and abilities of Count Dooku? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day or night, and I'll see you in the next video.